So, Juicy, 20 years in the county game. Why did you move away from it?
Oh, straight in. Love it.
Sorry, we don't fuck about here, Ross. Don't worry.
I love this. So, yeah, well, it was 22 seasons, starting in 2000 down at Somerset. Did 5 years there, then 5 years Northants. And I got rescued from Northants to go to Worcester for 12. And to be honest, Barks, I had enough. 22 years is a long time to hit the same chats in a dressing room time after time. But it was just a case of I could not affect what I wanted to just because of politics and having to go through different people and different things. And then you got constraints with budgets, which I was used to because, I was at 3 small counties with 3 small budgets. So I had to beg, borrow, steal for any kit that I could get. But when that was then sort of stopped, I was literally like, well, my hands have just been chopped off. I can't do anything, and I was at a stage where cricket strength was going okay, and I was able to do stuff and take accountability, because that's one of the big things for me, where there's zero accountability in county cricket. There's very, very little accountability away from county cricket either when coaches work with someone, and when I say coach, I'll blanket that to say every sort of practitioner working physio, S&C, skills coach, whatever it is, there's very little accountability. And I love working with the player and saying, right, if you follow what I do and what I say, we're able to get you either away from injury or bowling quicker or just enjoying your game more. And I couldn't do that within the confines of what I was doing. Also, there was a lot of backbiting about my business. A lot of a lot of bitching behind my back that I was hearing about, because luckily I had a couple of people I could rely on that would tell me, a lot of others who wouldn't. So it just got to a stage I was like, it's just not worth it anymore. I want to be able to really make big changes, but I couldn't. So I was like, right, fuck it, I'll just go on my own.
Wow. Well, yeah, no, sure. And then appreciate your honesty there. To be fair, when you talk about the politics that you encountered, what do you mean there? Do you mean kind of like between bowling coach, physio, S&C, or do you mean I don't know, that kind of thing?
So basically, the way I saw it, you had 2 different forms of it. You've had your club one and your national one. So. Right. National politics was everyone should be doing a similar thing, S&C wise, because that was my role. You had audits and all this sort of crap. And as long as you could make a nice little flow chart or Excel chart as an S&C, and just toe the party line, then everything was good and you'd make progress and you'd probably work for England and all that sort of stuff. That was never good enough for me. I couldn't sit there, see bowlers get injured time after time, bowlers not bowl quicker from when I started watching cricket in the mid-80s, and think we're doing the right stuff here. So for me, I had an inquisitive mind from very early on. I remember I went to a Pilates teacher in 2002 when I was at Somerset, because things just weren't making sense to me. And so when you don't toe the party line, when you try and do something different, you're going to get pushback. And I got a lot of pushback. But I couldn't look at players I work with in the eye and not do my very best for them. And that's how I saw myself, as a player's S&C, not a coach's S&C, because coaches, they know so little about the physical side of it. And it's not their fault. It's not their specialty. In the level 3 and level 4, the stuff they cover on S&C is generic and horrific, so they just come back with the same old stuff. So say you had a coach say to you, why aren't we doing yoga? And you explained how yoga is horrific for the human body if we want to be a para athlete. And they would sort of get it, but not, because their sort of bosses are saying, why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? Why aren't all our boys squatting? Everyone else in the world squats. Why aren't we squatting? I remember we played Australia once, and we had God, who was that big lad? big lad who was injured quite a lot, and he was there and he was running laps, and I had a coach say to me, "Oh, why doesn't Tungy look like that?" I said to him, Tungy bowls quicker than him. It is like there's this whole thing. I remember another coach saying, "Why don't our batters look like Jimmy Taylor?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" Because he came up after one winter and had massive biceps, and it was like, "What are we talking about here?" So you're constantly fighting that way, and then within the club, you're constantly fighting as well, because again, if you're trying to bring new stuff in and it works, you're not going to get the praise. If it doesn't work, you're going to get the shit. So it was always like that, and it's there's only so many times you can go to the well to fight the same fight, and I do it all the time for the players, because for me it was interesting watching you guys do the one about fitness testing. The bullshit that goes on with fitness testing. For me, the only fitness test is, can you play the season, and are you improving? That's it. The rest of it just little stockpiles around it. So when you're fighting sort of the national system, when you're fighting almost within your own system, you just get to the stage of thinking, God, get done. I was 42 and I'm tired now. I can't do this all the time. I'm still doing it, just in a different way. And now they can't shut me up.
No. So here's one, and this is meant to sound bad. I feel like in my career, I'm sure Keith might say the same, the S&C role, there's quite a lot of turnover.
Yeah.
So players really become victims of trends.
Mm.
Is that fair or not? Do you know what I mean? And I swear, Keith and I have probably seen 3 trends come and go, and we're almost back round to the start.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know that S&C's physios, they have an annual meeting, don't they? I think every year, and they go over stuff. Is that what you mean? They get a message from the ECB as, right, we think fast bowlers need to
basically, along those lines of, this is what we think fast bowling is and what they should be doing. But the cop out for me was always, then they got injured, and then it was, well, this is bowling. So what we saying here? We saying, is it a waste of time what we're doing because they're just going to get injured because it's bowling? That's not good enough for me. I cannot accept that, and I cannot again look at my play and say, right, we're gonna cane you here for 6 months, get you strong as hell, and then if you get injured, well, that's just bowling. That's not right. That doesn't sit well with me. So I see what you say about trends, but I think if you look underneath it, the same 6 exercises are probably still there, and they just dress it up a different way. We had a few years ago, some dickhead suddenly said, right, we need to do 10 lots of 40-meter sprints twice a week, and no one's ever going to get a hamstring injury again. And that came.
So that's because Leicester won the Premier League. That's what that is. That was when Leicester won the football, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, they did the Nord hamstring Nord board as well. So suddenly something like that will come in, or it will be based on a paper. I mean, the sprint work paper was based on AFL, not really a lot like cricket. So when you look at what actually involves in cricket, if you look at the soft tissue record of my lads at Worcester, it was very, very, very low. I left, and then the year after they did loads of sprints, and it went up. The bowlers were ringing me saying, I've suddenly got hammy injuries and this sort of stuff. It's like, because suddenly everything was blanketed. So you've got to go and do this. If you don't do this, you're going to get injured. Rather than my approach has always been, look at the individual. Look at you two, completely different shapes, completely different bowling actions, and the way you move would be completely different. But I'd hazard a big bet that most of your career when you're together, you had the same program because you had the same testing. A yo-yo, a sprint, a jump. That's only going to produce so many answers. But everyone gets, right, there you go and do this plan. We'll get you stronger, and that's definitely going to help you. And I guess for me, that's never been good enough. And so I got labelled as a black sheep, and he doesn't want to do this. He doesn't want to do strength. No, some of my boys were strong as hell. Moz was hip thrust in 250. We had Pat Brown at 74 kgs doing over 200 kilogram deadlift. Dylan, strong as hell. But it wasn't just about that for me. It was about, right, how do I make sure I get these players who have got this massive high skill level on the pitch so they can play, because there's no point being the strongest bloke in the physio room.
You miss Leachy out, by the way.
See, Leachy, Leachy, the thing with Leachy, it was so talented, and it was just about getting him on the park. So we had to be deceptive a lot of the times if we were doing any testing, just in case he didn't pass one or two. So I'd make sure he passed, because I knew pretty much he'd play 16 championship games a year, get 50 plus wickets, and do an amazing job. Whereas some Jobsworth coaches would say, yeah, but if he's not hitting this on the 2K, or his skinnies might be this, then he's not going to play. So we had to work out a way where we could just quiet that noise.
Was that manipulating a few figures? Was it?
100%. Because if it meant manipulating a few figures, then we did it. Because I knew if he was going to be dangerous to play, not a chance. But if he's a few millimeters over where they wanted him to be, and they were going to even not play him, but just the constant rabbit and chat, it was just right. How can we negate this?
Yeah.
So we'll do it.
So it's quite interesting what you said just a minute or two ago and what I found over the years, and I think we discussed it in the testing podcast we did, is a lot of bowlers I'd seen that were maybe higher up on the chart of fitness, doing all the different types of fitness testings that we do. A lot of those couldn't last throughout a season.
No.
And it was like a massive tick in the winter. They were top, they'd be in the green zone or green box, whatever it may be. But then you look at the overs they bowl in the season, and they might only have 120 overs in a season, whereas certain bowls went out with 500, maybe even 600 overs of kind of competitive overs. But those players, maybe like you said about Leachy, about keeping him on the park, those players may not be at the top, maybe near the bottom, but they'd be being sprayed for not being the right weight, or skin folds being a certain area, or not being strong enough. So yeah, I can see why it'd be frustrating for someone like yourself going, I know what the problem is here, or I know what can make things better, and you have to accept certain things from certain people to get the right performance on the pitch. So with what you're doing now, what are you, not just obviously what are you kind of coaching them, what are you telling these players for when they do have to go back to maybe their pathway sessions or academy sessions? What information do you give them?
So basically, yeah, great question. With that side of things, we explain, you will have tests that you've got to pass with them, but don't make them the sole aim, because that's the issue as well. Now, there's two sort of massive issues with fitness testing. The generic ones that get done aren't getting near to saying or getting near to helping a bowler understand where they're at with their body. So, a yo-yo, a sprint, a jump might tell you your aerobic capacity's down, might tell you your speed's down, might tell you your jumping ability's down. But the bigger question is why? And that's what interests me. So why can't they jump? Or why have they not got no aerobic capacity, But those sorts of things are easy to catch up on as well. I saw counties base their whole winter around passing these tests. And exactly like you said, they'd pass the test, everyone would be happy, they get a bottle of champagne from the ECB, you guys are amazing. Within 1 month, bang, 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 3 or 4 bowlers down, they'd have to get lone players in. Okay, and that's because we're, again, not looking at the same thing. So for me, with the players I work with, it's about individuality. So right, where you at? Where's your body at? How's it moving? Let's get that right. And the key thing is when we get that right, and the body's suddenly moving, and the kinetic chain's working, and the co-contractions are working, and the tendons are working, the fascial system, all these things, what we find is then a subsystem which is working so effectively, it raises everything else. So their strength goes up because the body's working as a whole unit. Their aerobic capacity, their jumping, their speed goes up. And that's the funny thing. I had a guy from the army on a few years ago he loved lifting, he loved running, and we almost took it all away from him. And he was on me all the time. I hate this. It's not, no, I'm not going to be strong, bang, bang, bang. 2 months into it, I said, right, go and do a deadlift session just to shut him up. He got a PB and he couldn't believe it.
Wow.
It was, I've not done it. I said, yeah, but your body's working. You know, you're not isolating. You're probably L2 to L4 and just about to pop it every time now. The body's working as a system. So for me, that's what I get my players doing now, is making sure the body's working. And the hardest part is trying to work with those on a pathway, on an academy or pros, and negate the stuff that they're given. Now, luckily, a lot of the time they're given stuff from a young S&C or an inexperienced S&C, and I say to them, are they watching what you do? Of course not. They're on their phone. They're styling their beard, whatever they're doing. So they can just go and do what they need to do, and we'll put a couple of exercises in so that if they suddenly look over, you know, they won't be like, what the hell is he doing? But we can sort of work around it, because we know a lot of the times they're just not looking. So it's tough, but obviously we can't say to them, because I'm not going to be there doing the testing. So they still have to do and pass the other tests. But that becomes easy once the body's working efficiently. And that's what we do, is actually take the time to have that working, and then just hope that we haven't got to deal with a crazy coach who's going to, like I said, make them bowl for 2 hours straight.
So that's interesting. Sorry, Wrighty. It's interesting you say that, because with the way funding is in county cricket, let's say, it isn't easy to kind of, it's easier to get in a young S&C that's just out of whatever, and so this may sound harsh, but kind of looking for a bit of a salary and try and get to sport. So the information they've learned over their years of learning strength and conditioning, it might be the newest thing that's out there at the moment, but also is most of the people that come into cricket from a young age may not have actually learned bowling, know what it's like to bowl, go through all the aches and pains, how your body feels and how it's recovering. So that is really an area that doesn't really get touched on at all. But from a coach's or a club's point of view, they kind of go, well, this is what they've learned, go with it. And then all of a sudden, for years, you can be battling with a youngster coming through who's not recovering well, or just a bit weak and like righty shoulders before we started a young lad's action, that they don't look to fix it because, well, we're just making stronger. It must be really frustrating if you've someone like yourself who's had all this information and you see it just being wasted through a youngster learning their trade on the job, basically.
Yeah, mate, it's horrendous. It's the worst thing, because with two things with that. We've got to ask about face. You know, the best people need to be working with the youngsters. Unfortunately, most people, once you get up to that sort of high end, you want to be pictured with an England tracksuit on tour somewhere instead of where you're actually needed. So we've got that issue. And then the other issue is, and this isn't just young S&Cs, I would say this is 99% of S&Cs haven't looked into bowling, as in, what is it? You know, what are we trying to affect? What's happening in the run-up? What's happening at back foot contact? What's happening at front foot contact? What's happening with hip-shoulder separation? Why isn't that happening on this bowler? You know, it's just a blanket case of, and everyone says the same thing, just get them stronger. And it's nothing to do with it. Literally, it's nothing to do with it. In the testing we're doing is showing that massively, showing it massively. Now, I won't say who the bowler was. We had an England bowler in last week who went through our battery of testing, and the things that really stood out were how much force they could put through and accept through the floor on a single leg press. So that's not anything to do with weights. It's how much, and then what's their jumping ability like through that single leg? Again, can they accept force? Can they use force? When we've got other guys coming in who aren't pros, but they're strong lads, they cannot do this. They cannot do this. And I'd love to do a lot more testing on a lot of pros, because I would think we would see some massive commonalities in pros that would be the difference maker to say, right, you know, if you're able to do this on one leg, if you can express force, if you can accept the force, if you can carry through, if we can co-contract to that low limb, we could effectively say, right, he's got the attributes to be able to bowl quick. Like Woody, for example, I'd love to look at Woody, because, you know, at 5'11", he must be able to accept a ridiculous amount of force through that body, a ridiculous amount. But then compare that to Jofra to say, right, I don't care about your 20-meter sprint. I don't care about your 2K. Let's dial in. What are the actual metrics that we know? Then we could go to a young seamer at 14 to say, right, if we work on this, and this is going to help your bowling massively, rather than all of them coming into their first academy session with your fresh S&C, and here's your session. All of you're doing the same thing, just getting stronger, because we're killing bowlers. We're effectively having bowlers at 15, 16 saying, I've had enough. I don't want to bowl again because I don't want to get injured, because these clowns are doing it time after time after time. But there's no excuse now for me. We've got this world where, I've got 160 bowlers online all over the world. There's enough time. There really is enough time. The way we can communicate with people. So it's not just about, but we're only seeing them for 1 hour a week. Bullshit. You can have access to them whenever you want. You're not telling me a 13, 14, 15-year-old's never online. So but it's the knowledge, Barks. That's the key. And that's the big disconnect between S&Cs, physios, bowling coaches. I think we've got a lot of good, and I would call a lot of bowling coaches bowling mentors, because that side of the game of talking a young player through, field settings, variations, grip, all that sort of thing, mindset, how are you going to react in this sort of thing? That's where those, Pop at Hampshire, to speak with him about bowling for half an hour is invaluable. But what we're doing is going to Pop, say, right, here's a bowler, but the engine's broke. Good luck. So they're trying to do stuff, and they probably get frustrated as hell, because they might want, a bowler's front arm to be doing something, but they physically can't do it. Their body's not working to that capacity. And so we're in this constant sort of loop of doing drills, just get stronger, and nothing's changing. And here's the big fucker for me, lads, is no one stopping and saying, this isn't working. This isn't working. Why are we doing the same stuff time after time after time? We're seeing the same England bowlers break down time after time after time, and they're doing the same program. And then somebody that says, let's go and do yoga. And it's just like, Jesus wept. Why are we going to look at the individual rather than just blanket on, we'll do yoga, then we'll do Pilates, then we'll do something else? It's like, no, look at, I always say when I'm talking to my players, if you took your car, if the engine light came on in your car and you took it to the garage and you had the mechanic there, and he just looked at it, just brushed up the bonnet a little bit, pumped the tires and said, no, you'll be all right. You'd ask some fucking big questions before you drove that car off. For the body, we'll just go in and, the physio might look at it, but the physio, he's not going to do too much, because if he's with you, he's not next to the coach kissing his ass. So he wants to press you on as quick as possible. And then you've got the S&C come in, say, well, yeah, we'll just get you stronger. I think that's the key. No one's looked at it. So you've got a player thinking, my body's fucking killing it, but I'm not getting anything. I'm just doing the same again, but get stronger. We had a bowler who had motor control issues around his core, and all I kept hearing was get stronger. And he was deadlifting over 200k. And I said to the doctor, I said, so are we going to do 210 and suddenly he's going to be fine? What's the end game here? And he just said, no, we'll just keep getting stronger. And I was just like, no, I don't want to hear that. There's got to be something else, but you just don't hear it.
I feel like there's a bit of a different culture in the USA, actually, where people can kind of have their own S&C, and they have, let's take LeBron. He has an S&C he works with that's not presumably the LA Lakers S&C. Do you know what I mean? It's like a private relationship. I feel like for players, even experienced professionals, it's a weird line to tread, isn't it? You almost feel bad for going outside of your county arrangement to get what might be a fresh look, or it might just be that there's a world leading person in a certain position, but you feel like you're almost cheating on your county a bit. I don't know if that's something you've come across.
Right, that's massive. Okay, that in what I hear a lot is, but my S&C's, they're such a nice guy. I feel bad but it's your career. Nice guy or not, it's your career, and that's where tennis players, golfers, a lot in America, American football, baseball, they're more ruthless because they understand this. And I think we're probably in the UK maybe too nice, because remember, a club will get rid of you very quick. We've all been with people, bowlers, who've been great guys, got injured, and the club gone, right, off you go. And those injuries might have occurred because of the club. So it's a case of players have got to be a little bit more selfish, to be honest, and say, I've got a 15-year career if I'm lucky. I need to get the most out of that. And to get the most out of it in this day and age means a lot of cash. So in something which stuck with me from Steph years ago in my first year at Somerset. He had a gym in his garage. So he was one of the first ones who ever did like a lot of S&C work. And I said, mate, you've got all this kit. And he said, yeah, but if I spend 10 grand on kit this winter and that helps me add 10 miles an hour and I get 20 more wickets, that's going to add 30 grand onto my pay packet. And it's like that whole mindset is just something which isn't there. I was speaking to a lad who's in between sort of professional and non-professional.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the pathway that he could go and the money he could earn. And instead of thinking about that and thinking, right, if I invest this, his mind went, yeah, but can I save a bit of money as well? And I was just gobsmacked. I was like, are you there's a penny not dropping here. You try to save 100 quid instead of thinking, can I make 100 grand? So I'm like, yeah, there's so much opportunity there that I think players, in something I say in a lot of my posts, is players wake up. Wake up here, because you're literally being sort of like sleepwalking towards your career being finished because of injury, because of crap training, and you're letting it happen. If the easiest thing to say to players is, if you've got a program which is exactly the same as your mates, and that mate's not an identical twin, you need to ask some questions. And at the very least, you need to get some accountability from these people to say, okay, so if I follow this plan and I don't go and get someone outside of here, are you going to tell me that I'm not going to be injured and I'm going to bowl quicker? Yes or no? There's no way they'll say yes, because there's a complete lack of honesty. So that's where players need to be smart and need to look after their own backs, because clubs won't do it. They just won't do it.
Yeah. You know what I've always believed. I say always believed. After a few years, believed is you need to have. I think there's an element of something that you've got to keep secret for yourself, and it could be anything. I think it's great for your mind as well to have this sort of little secret goal. Like it might be mobility. It might be Pilates, although maybe not according to what you're saying. It could be. It could be. Do you know what I mean? It could be just some long distance running away from prying eyes or anything like that. But I do think you've got to take personal responsibility. And if you're just doing what you're told, then you're not really in control of your own ship, are you? Do you know what I mean? You just, yeah, I don't know.
It's something I used to. So sorry, mate. When we had overseas come into the club, especially experience overseas, the last thing I would do is go steaming in and say, right, you're doing this, and this. I'd literally say to them, listen, I'm here to help. You tell me what you need and what you like doing, and I'll help facilitate it. Because when you get to that sort of stage, you know pretty much what your body needs, and you tick over. When I was at Northants, we had Andy Hall, Johan van der Vat, Johan Lowe, Nicky Boyer, Klusner. Well, most of South Africa were there. And it was literally like, right, how can I help you, lads? And they did a lot of stuff that I didn't agree with and didn't like, but they were from a generation before, a lot of them, so they'd do their static stretching and things like that, and it would just be like, if that makes you feel good, you go for it. And that's the sort of what you afford the senior player who understands their body a little bit more. Again, it's not to say I agreed with it, and I didn't think there'd be other stuff that could help them, but with a young player, you want to give them a lot more sort of benefit of, right, if we get on this now, this can help you later on. And then, like you say, then you can go off and find those little things that work. In Pilates, to be honest, I'm quite a fan of Pilates because it's more motor control. I guess my point with that was, when you blanketly, if you've been working with someone who's injured and you're getting nowhere, and you just say, right, let's just add that. It's throwing shit against the wall and hoping something sticks. There's no plan with it. And that's what drives me mad. You know, I see posts out there with someone, they can't get fit and suddenly they're doing Pilates. It's just like, if there was an actual structure to this, you'd probably get there rather than we'll do a bit of this, then we'll do a bit of that, and then we'll do a bit. You know, it's crazy. You know, it's crazy.
Just you, sorry, Jules, you talking about Northants and a lot of South Africans are there. Just something I wondered actually, because from a bowling aspect of what we've seen from being able to bowl more overs more consistently and for longer periods of time, a lot of South Africans, for example, grew up more outdoors than what I would say a lot of kids over here do.
Yep.
Would you say for a bowler in the way they move and what you've described of different kind of stability and power, that kids that actually do more activities, more various different types of sports, they seem to tick more boxes for yourself than that one child who is indoors a lot and then just practices bowling or cricket itself?
100%, mate. Yeah, 100%. And that's where we're seeing the differences in the generations now. If you're outdoors a lot, and even down to being out of shoes a lot, you know, if we go back to, you know, I'm 44. When I was growing up, I was watching the Great West Indies teams, and you know, when they were coming up, the way that if they're playing on the beach, they'd be barefoot, they'd be using a tape ball, things like that. So you know, that's the origins of underweight bowling. And when you're out of shoes and you're on different surfaces, you're getting the fascial system working, you're getting the plantar fascia working under the feet. You know, the feet are working brilliantly. They're getting all the jumping they need. Yet everything is working as they need. When you get someone who just plays cricket, who's in shoes all the time, who's sat down most of the day, and then who's inside playing their computer games, their body and their fascial system is shutting down completely. But if you've got someone, even at an older sort of range, who does multiple sports, then we see when we're screening a lot of better things coming out. And interestingly as well, we look at with youngsters, if we see them doing a martial arts or some form of dance or gymnastics, we see their screening results so much better because they're understanding how to use their body and left to right as well. Obviously, cricket is so asymmetrical that one side's always going to be more dominant than the other. So if we are seeing those things around, and then if you add something like a basketball in there as well, where you're training the jump mechanics so much better, then you're giving the body those weapons to really succeed. And if you notice, we've not talked there at all about any strength work because it doesn't need it at that point. You know, later on we can do, but we want it to be working efficiently. And that's the biggest word. I think we take efficiency away from bowlers massively. If you look at how Finney used to bowl, you know, my first year at Worcester, he got 9 for coming down the hill at Worcester, bowling speed of light. 5 years later, he was bowling no balls because his knee was bending that much. He was hitting the stumps. It wasn't bending in 2010. So something between 2010 to 2015 in his training had changed his action at a fundamental level. And I think we see that too often. Too often. I think one of my favorite bowlers is Jofra. I look at the way he moves now compared to the way he moved when he was first playing for Sussex. I see a lot of differences that make me think, Jesus, okay, have we taken an absolute gem, and ruined it? You know, because he should have been playing the last 5 years, best bowler in the world. And I just horribly think we got it wrong. We tried to train him as a Western bowler and messed him up. So it's understand again, it all goes back to the individual and how do we best maximize and what are we looking for? If we're looking for someone who can lift shitloads and can jump through the roof with a counter movement jump, as well as do a 5-minute 2K, brilliant. Are they going to be the best bowler? Because, you know, what's there? There's a saying, do we judge a goldfish's knowledge or something about a goldfish by if they can climb a tree? And I think we're at that sort of stage with bowlers. We're judging them on the wrong things and missing out on some real gold.
So circling back to the start, and I watch a lot of your content. You know, I really enjoy it, especially some of your more comical posts. I enjoy the creativity you're getting into those. you talk about assessments a lot.
Yep.
So obviously, I appreciate you might want to give everything away, but what are you looking for when you assess, and what do you think fast bowling requires from the body?
Brilliant. Yeah. To be honest, like we give away everything. You know, there's nothing under the emperor's cloak with us. It's like this is what we do. So when it comes to assessments, we look at 3 different things on the body. We look at, one is movement capability. So primarily ankles, hips, thoracic. You know, are you able to move? And then we dial down from that, say into the thoracic. So can you move seated? And then what about in a half kneeling position? If you've got the same sort of movement, is it more, is it less? That gives us an indication to start of how your body sort of is working. From there, then we then do some strength measures, and I call them sort of strength parameters. So mid-thigh pull, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
We do a single leg calf press. We do a lying shoulder assessment, but then we do a front foot contact shoulder assessment. So then we say, right, so when we're laid down and we're just using the shoulder, how much force can you produce? And then when the rest of the body's involved, can you produce the same, less, or more? Because everything we do tells us something. Then we look at power expression. So we're looking at arm speed, velocity. We can be looking at ground contact time, jump height, and those sorts of things. So then we get a whole picture of where the player's at and what are they missing. Now that's the key thing. What's missing in your makeup, which is stopping you? A lot of the time we see really, really tight hips. Hip internal rotation is terrible. Thoracic's not moving. Ankles locked down. But then it's not just saying, right, so this bowler's struggling with movement, let's stretch the fucker. No. It's like, well, why? Again, why is that tight? Not just stretching on something tight to try and make it move. So then it's deeper than that. So, you know, if someone's got a really poor ankle dorsiflexion, but then we put them on a single leg calf raise and they can't produce much force, and then we put them on a single leg drop jump and they can't produce much force, we know there's something deeper there than just a lack of movement. It's probably a lack of stability. The co-contraction is not happening. So that's why we try and do a lot more sort of in-depth testing so that we're not guessing. Because that's one of the words, again, you know, if someone's just doing movement testing, then they'll just stretch you because they'll say, if you fail one, you just need stretching. If you're just doing a strength test, they'll say you've got to get stronger. And that's where there's a massive disconnect for me, which, you know, testing days. Now, I've seen a few lately where I've seen a bit more jumping and force plates and things like that, which is great. It looks like, you know, we're going forward. But if we're doing a jump test and you're not hitting the 40 centimeter threshold, then if some fucker just says, right, we're just doing shitloads of jumping, that could be the worst thing for you. Complete worst thing for you, because there's something at a deeper level that's stopping you doing that jumping. So yeah, that's what we do with testing. And then once we're past that, if we've got someone who's in and around the high levels, then, you know, we get the 20-meter sprint, we do the counter movement jumps, we do the other stuff to make sure that the box tickers gets their box ticked so that the player doesn't get held back for a crap reason, basically.
Yeah, that sounds really cool, to be fair. Yeah, I'll have to come and give it a go, 100%.
Right, yeah, come on over.
So what about then, if we're talking more broadly now, so you've assessed on all this sort of stuff, I'd love to know like your views on conditioning, for example, like where you sit in terms of your long duration conditioning versus, like, we do a lot of MAS intervals and stuff like that. I'm sure, Keith, you do that as well. And it's based off the 2K time, right? And obviously the 2K and the yo-yo still get tested. But I can honestly say I've never felt like that when I've been on a cricket pitch, which is always found really jarring. Yeah, I'd love your perspective on that.
It's box ticking. You know, it's box ticking. Like, so they're doing the MAS to get your yo-yo or your 2K up. And we're looking at the wrong things. You're a bowler. You know, what sort of stuff do you need for a bowler? And also, for me, a lot of it, especially when I was a little bit older and a little less hot-headed, was talking to the bowler to find out, you know, what drives you here. So it might be, Barks might say to me, oh, I love sprint work. And Wrighty, you might say, I like to get out and do sort of 20, 30 minute, you know, long distance. And so for me, it will be taking that into consideration because it's important, to be able to do stuff that you enjoy and are quite good at. And then it's how do we support that? So whatever we're doing, it comes down to efficiency of the body. And if we drive the efficiency up, then life gets easier. You probably look at someone who, like marathon runners, when they're doing ridiculous speeds for their 2 hours, and it looks so easy. It's because they're so efficient. And once we get that efficiency level, then anything that we want to do, sort of either running wise or gym wise, and particularly bowling wise, becomes easier. And for me, that's one of now we know bowling's hard work. There's no two ways about it. You got a 4-dayer and you're still bowling on the last evening of the 4th day, you're going to come off and you're knackered. But I think we make it harder than it needs to be because we're not using the body's natural systems to be efficient. Now, the best case for me, when we look at the efficiency of a bowler who did his own thing quite a lot of his career and he's still just put himself in the IPL now, is Jimmy. Mate, you look at Jimmy's action, and that is a picture of efficiency.
Smooth.
Efficiency. Smooth from the back foot contact, the transition, the hip turn to front foot contact. He's got a hip shoulder separation. Everything's coming forward. His body's just adapted to it, and it works so efficiently that he can keep going and keep going and keep going. And he was still bowling those long spells. Whereas most people work on the other end of the spectrum, and they're just working on energy. So they're forcing the ball down there. Okay, and that's where the bowlers are falling off as well and getting the lateral flexion because they're just trying to force it harder and harder because we keep using that term, get stronger. So get stronger, then we'll get bowl quicker, but it doesn't happen. When we're more efficient, we bowl quicker. And then the beauty is with that efficiency, we can bowl quicker for longer. So that second spell, that third spell, we're able to come back because we're using the fascial system instead of using and depleting the muscles. And that's why you probably see bowlers who can absolutely nail a 2K or yo-yo, but they're absolutely useless to you by the second spell on the second day. They're gone. And some fucking idiot will say, oh, we need to get his yo-yo up. Again, instead of looking at the key issue of, no, they're not efficient. You're forcing them down it every time rather than get into mechanics. Let's get their body better and working from there. So there's a lot of almost false positives where you just hear, right, you need to go and run, you need to go and stretch, you need to get stronger. And it's just blanket statements put out by all these different coaches that the player just gets lost in and left. And fucking hell, I've just done 2 seasons of doing that. You've told me to do it. I've done it. I'm still not able to do this with my bowling. Why not? And again, you just get stronger. it's just bad.
How do you find obviously you do a lot of your stuff now online, and that market is quite saturated in just from various different companies or people. And I used to have a young teammate of mine who did have an online coach, but knew him personally. And you mentioned about being more efficient, you naturally be quick. But a lot of people talk about energy and just bowling fast, trying to bowl faster by energy. With this lad, he was taught about brace front leg, blocking his hips off, and basically highing it down there as quick as he can, doing a lot of med ball slams, etc. And something I identified, which I tried talking to him about, was he overstrided when he was running into bowl. But then naturally, as you run into bowl, your stride is a certain point, your stride at the crease will be naturally bigger than your running stride. And I tried to say to him, look, you need to maybe shorten your stride pattern to maybe not make your stride at the crease as big. Do you think with that market of pace, which there is a lot of trying to just bowl quicker, that do you get frustrated with what you see at times with what people will talk about?
Again, they're just, no one's asking the questions. They're just seeing something and hearing someone on the internet say, "Oh, just do this exercise and you bowl quicker. Just do this and you bowl quicker." Just take your fucking minute. Just look. Okay, who is this that's telling me this? What have they done? Who have they worked with? Who have they helped do what they're saying they're going to do to you? And a lot of the time, there's very little beneath the surface. That's why one of the big things on our social media, I said I've done 22 years in the pro game. I've done my time. The cricket strength's been going since 2013. We show our testimonials. We show what we do. I'm an open book. If anyone asks me a question, they get a straight answer because I believe in what we do so much. Most of the stuff out there is bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. It's about now. There's now a lot of the work Steph's done is amazing, and he talks about the different parameters for pace in the where you want to be at certain positions. What happens though is people with a lot less understanding of it will take it and hone in on one of those positions and say, if you don't have a brace front leg, you're not going to bowl quick. Now, brace front leg is a combination of what happens at back foot contact, the transition from back foot to front foot, and the physical ability of the body to do that, and then brace. What we see is people trying to shoehorn it in on a body that isn't ready for it. Plating it isn't ready. And then we're seeing issues. And then we're seeing injuries. Then we're seeing them not getting the speeds that they could get. The speed is a lot. Stability plus balance equals power and pace. We're losing this. We're losing this. And, again, I always go back to the 80s and even the early 90s. Wakar, Wazim. We looked at Ambrose, Courtney Walsh, Malcolm Marshall. All these guys all look very, very different, but all could bowl rapid. Absolutely. Dev Malcolm, Jesus, Darren Goff, all these people. One of my favorites, Caddy. My first years at Somerset, what a bowler he was.
Yeah.
These are all so different, and I think all of them were probably better off for the fact they weren't in our generation getting absolutely annihilated by some idiot with a barbell. But what we see now is just like, if you can't do that position, then you're ruined. I have people all the time messaging me saying, how can I get a brace front leg? How can I stop my collapse with back foot contact? Like there's going to be one or two drills that are going to stop it. But you've got these snake oil salesmen saying, no, we'll do this for you, we'll do this. They're not looking at the body. So there's lots of people in this space, but I think where we stand is alone, because there's no one looking just at the body and saying, no, we almost think of ourselves like the mechanics, to get the race car ready, and then we'll hand it over to the race coach or whatever they're called to say, right, this engine's ready, go for it. So like we talked with Pop, the way I see it is I get someone ready and say, Pop, there you go. He's ready to go. Whatever you want to do with him now, he can do. And that's what we're lacking. And just telling someone again, you're going to get stronger, you'll bowl quicker, which a lot of these pages are doing, because people send me them. People send it saying, look at this, what do you think? And I just, again, just look into these people before, these youngsters as well. They're talking about things and they just don't know. So people are so desperate to do well with cricket. They'll chuck money at it. But I don't. So we have a guarantee, because if you work with us, there's a guarantee you will get the results you want. And if you don't, we'll give you the money back. There's not a problem. These kids haven't got it. These clowns haven't got it because they don't know what they're doing. And they'll just chuck you a load of exercises, which they've probably copied from my page, from Steph's page, and a couple of others, and try and package it up and pour the wool over your eyes. And then what's the classic line? If you do get injured, it's bowling. That's like, we'll clear the decks. Whatever happens, it's bowling. So you're going to get
interesting, actually. You've just touched on that. I like your thoughts on this. So, because to a certain extent, I understand the saying. There's been times when I've had 3 knee operations. Wrighty's had 1, 2 stresses in your bike or whatever. That sometimes I feel you can be quite fit, quite strong, whatever, but you can be chucked the ball at any point, especially as a county player. Do you not think there is a certain, as they like to call it, red zone you may end up going where you've bowled too much, but you get thrown the ball again and you are exposing yourself to injury? Do you not think that there is that?
I think there is. I think that one of the better papers was looking at when there's been a massive spike. I think it was about a 30 over spike. then the real danger period was something like 28 days later. So that was one we really looked at. I remember my last few years at Worcester to say, right, if we have had this massive spike, let's make sure that we're looking after them, not just immediately after, but in the whole month after. But again, it's the parameters of that player. Say knee injuries. Knee injuries is one that I get my knickers in a twist about, because the player again gets told, "Well, you've been unlucky there," and I was like, "Well, hang on. What was his hip internal rotation before it happened? What was his ankle dorsiflexion before it happened?" You know, and if we don't know this, you know, we see, you know, you guys used to play with someone who was put in a massive ankle brace, and someone who had hip issues, and then his knee went, and all I heard was, "Oh, that's unlucky." Well, hang on, you've taken away his movement at his ankle and his hip. Where do you think is going to try and get extra movement? His knee. So something's going to go there. And again, we blanket it by saying that's unlucky. But again, we're not dialing in enough. Now, I'm not an idiot. You know, players are going to get injured. Are we doing enough to make sure it doesn't happen? I don't think so. I don't think so. You know, someone tears their hammy off the bone, to say it's just cricket is negligent. It's negligent. But for me, what's worse is players to accept it. You know, this isn't an age where, again, you know, when I was growing up and you looked at the people who ruled cricket, and anyone who spoke out was gone. Players have got the power now. You know, let's be really honest with it. The players have the power. So just to accept the same poor training and the injuries isn't good enough anymore, without saying no. But yeah, they're you know, you can't bowl 50 overs a week every week all season and expect to be okay. You know, something is going to go wrong. But are we doing enough to help the body as much as possible? Are we looking at the right things? I would say not by a long shot. Not by a long shot.
Again, in my experience, and to be fair, I've been very lucky at Leicester, but as a general rule over my career, I feel like S&Cs and physios, there's quite a big disconnect with how they operate. I'm going to try and put this politely. Physio, like, I don't know if I can. Physio exercises seem very ad hoc, random little things. It doesn't seem as, whereas an S&C program is very structured. Why does it seem so different? And where's that wrong? Is that wrong from the physio end or the S&C end, or?
So it disconnects the right word. I bring the bowling coach into that as well. So you've got a little triangle here, and the players in the middle. So you've got the physio, who doesn't really understand exercise, but for some reason is in control of everything when it comes to the medical side of it. So they'll do a little bit, and then you might be pain-free. So then you're passed up the ladder to the S&C. Now, if we already talked about, the S&C doesn't understand bowling. He understands strength work. So then you're loaded. You're loaded for a few weeks, and then, you know, one of the most ridiculous things, let's do some walkthroughs, shall we? Why? You know, the walkthroughs are nothing like bowling. So you're suddenly doing that. And then the bowling coach will come in because he's seen you doing walkthroughs. The body's not prepared to bowl at all. There's been nothing joined up along the whole thing. It's just out of pain with a few exercises, getting strong, and then lumped with the bowling coach. So then, right, we're doing some walkthroughs, then we'll do a few jog throughs, then we'll start bowling off half run. You know, it's just a mess, a complete mess. There's no point where someone would say, right, Wrighty, you're good to go now because you've ticked off X, Y, and Z. And that, for me, again, it's never been able to say he's 100% not going to get injured now. But if we talk about like a 10-point plan, at 0, you're injured, at 10, you're back match bowling. What do we need to tick off along the way to know that, right, we've covered that, now we can move on? You know, so we can talk about, say, the end of the physio work, number 3. Right, what's number 4? Movement competency, maybe. What's number 5? Beginning to slowly load the body. Number 6, accepting force, jumping. Number 7, running. Number 8, medicine ball, half kneeling bowling. Number 9, bowling at the same time as doing drills. You know, and with our players, if they're going to do any sort of bowling, the lowest percent they're going to do is 70%. If they can't do it below 70%, they don't bowl because there's no point. It's not going to carry over. So by the time someone's bowling in a net, they've worked their way up. But also, if you work your way up that stream and you get to number 7 and then you have a little setback, you know where it is. If you go from 3, finishing with the physio, to trying to bowl and something happens, it's a guesswork. Well, what wasn't the body ready for? So it's about that. And that's, again, part of the reason I came on my own is because I didn't, that whole process, and not blaming any of the individual parts of it, but it's insanity. If I want to do this, I've got to go and speak to the physio, who then wants to speak to the head coach, who then wants to speak to the bowling coach. And me and the player there went, any danger? Can we get on and do it? My last year there, we had a player we had to do secret sessions with because the whole thing was just fucked. Right. So we would go in the pitch when everyone had gone home to make sure we could do what we needed to, because we knew we needed to do it. So yeah, now if a player comes to me with a stress fracture, I can take them through the whole process from initial assessment, scan, all the way back to bowling, and the whole thing be joined up, rather than the scattered of a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and then got to get him stronger, blah, 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 and then walkthroughs. So everything can actually flow like it should do. And then again, we know by the time we get to 10, right, we've done everything we can here. If something happens, it happens, but we've done everything we can.
Yeah, love it. So we talked a bit there, like, about injuries and stuff like that. In terms of, again, general bits of advice, more prep and recovery, have you got any, I don't want to say golden tickets, but what do you highly recommend in those areas to keep yourself on the park injury free?
Brilliant. So if we talk about prep in recovery, so prep, don't stretch. You're not preparing the muscle for what it needs to do when we're stretching. We're doing the opposite. The exact opposite of what we want to do as a power athlete. As a fast bowler, you're a power athlete. So don't static stretch. What we do is things like movement flows, running drills, because running drills, the mechanics of the running drill in and around the sort of lower limb are the same as we want for bowling, same sort of positions. Then med balls, a lot of half kneeling bowling work. That sort of thing is going to prep the body so much better for bowling and have you ready to go. And recovery, there's so much bullshit. If you, like, at the end of the game, if you want to just have a beer on the outfield and chill, brilliant. But when those idiots come out with the bands and the foam rollers and it's like, no, just let the body relax, and then, like, before bed, maybe have a cold bath, contrast shower, do some really pointed soft tissue work with maybe a vibration gun, which is fantastic for the fascia. Nutrition, hydration, sleep, nailed. Pulling your hamstring over your head with a band at the end of the game is going to do very little apart from possibly break it.
Luckily, I haven't done this for a while, actually, but there's nothing worse than that on-field recovery after a day. Like, let's say you're on a pre-season in Dubai or something, it's really hot, you've done your day, and then someone comes out with, like, and you just want to get inside in the shade or whatever, and someone's got you doing hamstring stretches out there, like, hideous, on the itchy grass as well. You're like, oh God.
But I got pulled into the office once with one of the coaches because the bowling coach had said to him, I can't remember who we were playing someone at home, one of the bigger counties, and we weren't doing well, and so the bowling coach had to find someone to blame, and he was jumping up and down because their team was out stretching after the game, and the head coach got me in and said, why don't we do any recovery? And I reeled off the recovery we do, and he sat there and was like, oh, right. Okay, yeah, so we do a lot. Just because you're not throwing it in someone's face and, right, let's all do it in front of the fans and the coaches, doesn't mean you're not doing it. But again, like, a lot of that stuff, mate, if you've been on the pitch for 6 hours, the last thing you want to do is stay on there. You want to get off, you go to the toilet, have a shower, freshen up, and get away from that ground. Because most of the time the change rooms were tiny. You all sat on each other's fucking laps. So it's like, get away, and then you can start the real recovery process.
We used to have it a bit worse than that. I'd have taken that at one point. I remember one season especially, we'd bowl the team out, done really well. It might be towards the end of the day, and the head coach at the time was like to the S&C, get him in the gym. I want my bowlers to be fit, the fittest and strongest that there is. I feel like we've just bowled 20 overs each. Like, hang on a second. And our S&C poor guy would like, look, lads, can you just look as though you're doing something in the gym, please, just to save my ear being chewed off. Do you remember that, right?
I do. I'll say his name here. That's where Army was amazing. Like with the soft skills, he was such a good guy. He got that side of things. I remember because obviously you're talking about Ashley Giles. And you know what? Yeah, he was a hard head coach, and he worked his players hard. He's allowed to do that. That's like that's his prerogative and stuff. But equally, Army was able to be like, look, I get it. Just grunt periodically in the gym with the door shut. But I do remember that. Okay, another one for you then. In terms of just going in season training, you're familiar with a pro schedule, and we get a lot of professionals listening to this, which obviously we're really pleased with. But for a pro who, let's say they start a 4-dayer on a Thursday, so day 1 Thursday, 2 Friday, and so on. How do you fit your in-season training into that week? Because I feel like even playing for as long as we have, Keith, I still don't quite know what's right. I have ideas, but then doing them practically doing them isn't the easiest. You have your head coach say, right, we're not gonna do anything the day before. We're gonna do training the day before that. Or you might have someone that says we're going to have loads of rest and we're going to come in and we're going to have nets the day before, for example. And you're always juggling this. I mean, I don't know what your view is.
It's always quite tough. For me, we used to have 3 sessions that I want them to do a week. Sort of gym-based sessions. So an upper, a lower, and a core. So really basic, okay? There might be 5 exercises in each, all slightly different. So it would be, right, when's best to fit this in? Because I also want them to have days off. And if they had a day off's ruined if you're coming in. Whatever time of day, some people want to do it at 9, some people want to do it in the afternoon, some lunch, it's going to be ruined. So first off, within the 4-day games and the 1 training day you'd have, that's 5 days. Right, I need to fit these 3 sessions into the 5 days. So training day would be one of them. Right, we'll get that done. And then during the games, there was always a little bit more time than you thought, mainly because coaches waste so much time pre-game. So say we're 4-dayer and toss goes up, we're having a bat. It's like, right, lads, talking about the bowlers here in the gym. Watch the first couple of overs, then we'll get it done. Because our sessions, they're just maintenance. They're not about making you sore. Literally 20 minutes. So by the first morning, we've already done the training day session. We've already done another one. So now we've got 1 more session. Then we've got to try and get in somewhere around the next game. Okay.
Yep.
So that would be quite flexible. But other than that, we did a lot of soft tissue work, a lot of recovery work in the mornings. So probably remember the little gym we had at Worcester. The bowlers would be in. One of the big things that I brought in was getting us breakfast. And it seems quite little, but a lot of them wouldn't have breakfast. So I was like, I want them to come in, have a little bit of time together. And the bowlers always being first. So they have a good bit of crack, a little bit of food. Then into the gym around sort of 8:45, and they'd do 15 minutes just working through their little issues. Then they'd have a bit of time with a physio. And then luckily, by the time I finished in 2021, we were a lot smarter with the warm-ups. It wasn't 9:30 on deck every day. Like when I was at Northants, every single day, 9:30 on deck. A lot of times 10 to 10 would be done. Look at each other and, well, what now? So we're able to push that back, and then you've suddenly got a lot of time. Then, say you're batting on the second day, why do the bowlers have to be in at 8? Why? And this is something Notts did really well years ago. I'm talking when they had Elam and those sort of guys. I remember they came to play us in Northants, and we were out there at 9:30, I think day 2, because we batted first day, and then their bowlers weren't there. Like, where the hell are the bowlers? And their coaches said, don't come into 11. So they just chilled. They'd had a pool session. They came in at 11. They might have done a bit of a gym session. So it's finding those times, and it even might be after a game. So say you finished a game at Edgbaston, and then the bus was going to leave in an hour for Durham, but the next day you had a day off. If you could get a maintenance session in before you left, then brilliant, because then it's all done. Then you get up to Durham, you can have your lie-in, have a chill day, go around Newcastle, then play the next day, and everything's done. So it's finding the times to get it. But training day, first morning, and then one other. But the key is to have the buy-in from the players to know that these sessions aren't going to hurt them, because a player is not going to want to do a session if he thinks he's going to have DOMs from it and it's going to affect his game. The S&C work needs to help enhance the game, not take away from it for the ego of the S&C.
Sure.
But that I think happens far too much. So the little wormy S&C can go, hey coach, look, he's put on 30 kgs. Doesn't matter. If he can play, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah. And so, sorry, Keith, just quickly. So the maintenance there you're talking about, I'm assuming you're talking about closer to an 1RM and fewer reps?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't even be sort of around the 1 hour. If we were doing something like a higher raised trap bar deadlift, they might do 2 or 3 lots of 2, something like that, and just work on the power aspect. And then a lot of the other things would be a lot of movement integration work, sort of power bag, kettlebell work, just working the movements, working a kinetic chain, and just keeping that all working freely.
Nice. Sorry, Keith, I interrupted you. Go.
It's all right. Just because we do have a lot of club cricketers who listen and do ask us questions. What advice would you give to them that aren't looking to be professional and do everything smack bang perfect, but just from a bowling aspect, what advice could you give them to look to improve themselves physically and from a maybe pace side of things themselves?
Brilliant. Yeah. So the number one thing is work the kinetic chain. Understand what that is. Go Google it. The kinetic chain is so important in any sort of asymmetrical throw in sport. So we're looking baseball, cricket, in batting, boxing, tennis, anything like that. The kinetic chain is king. And so to work through that sequence is huge. If you can do that, that's the reason where you see sometimes like someone who's never been near the gym, but can sprint really fast, hit the ball miles and run quick. It's because their body's efficient, and that's the key thing. Look on that efficiency side, get the body working efficiently, and you'll see absolute gold. If you just go and load, strength, you might get a little bit of pace added on at the start, but it's going to kill you. It's going to kill you. Just the fact, because you've probably done 3 winters doing the same stuff, and you're even at like exactly the same place or worse off. So getting the body efficient, get the kinetic chain working, work with med balls rather than barbells, you'll see so much better results.
So I've got another one. So obviously, appreciate the med ball side of things. Where do Olympic lifts, do they feature at all in your programming?
No.
And why is that? Just the technical difficulty of it more?
But the rate of force development you get in there is still so less compared to bowling. It doesn't transfer. It really doesn't. If you've got, again, like running a little bit, if you've got someone who loves doing them, and is doing a couple of sets of hang cleans, mate, crack on. Not a problem. But why would you train something which has got such little carryover, where the med ball, you work in stability and power at the same time and being able to get in the positions we want to see while bowling? So much more carryover. The barbell, it restricts you so much. It's crazy. One of the fucking madness things for me was years ago when the ECB had this fast bowlers program in the winter. The first thing they used to do was give these bowlers fucking lifting shoes.
Yeah. I've done one of those programs, to be fair.
It was like, what? Oh, sorry. Madness, absolute madness. And luckily that's been stopped now because it just didn't work because everyone again, right, just get stronger. We'll take you over to South Africa and get you stronger. Did it work? No.
Yeah. I think I feel for it because I think in some respects it was well intentioned, but the idea of getting a group of the best young bowlers in the country together for training, it sounds awesome, but I think the execution.
Yeah, the idea is brilliant. The execution horrendous, and it never changed. That's the issue with it. And you look at some of the poster boys they had for it who never had a career. And you think, Jesus Christ! Again, anyone put their hand up and say sorry? I think so.
No. I feel like the issue with that in my head was there's a reason why people potentially got selected for that program, right? Maybe they had a stellar season, a breakthrough season where they pushed themselves to a limit or to a place that they've not maybe been before. And what they really probably needed was a little come down from that, just to decompress, rather than, here's another huge training camp where you know what I mean? Everything just gets that little bit harder. The demands of that, and the body's not there. It's not ready.
If you're leading the country and what you do is you're the ECB and you're saying you've got all these amazing people on board, whether it be coaches, S&Cs, physios, you should understand that. You should be able to provide the framework for a bowler to come into you. You might have a youngster like the youngster who's just played from Leicester, the big tall lad. Yeah, you might have him on one end. You might have Wokesy at the other end. You should be able to, if you're the best at what you do in the country, provide the right platform for both of those ends of the spectrum to keep progressing it and have what you need there. So you blanket it all. Are you helping? Not really. Just labeling it the fast bowlers camp isn't helping. I remember I had a massive argument with someone who wanted to take one of our young players from Worcester on one of these camps. Said he's not ready. You leave him, please. Just leave him. 1 or 2 winters. Yeah, okay. Hear what you're saying. Next day, we're taking him. 1 month later, he's in the scanner. It's like you're just not listening. You just said, right, let's get these young bowlers to get them strong as hell. Brilliant. Yeah, come on. Let's go and have loads of steak in South Africa. What's happening now?
Yeah, I know Wrighty's not turning that down if that gets offered.
No, it's called Beef Boys. It's such a good spot.
But do you know what? That must be really difficult because obviously you're the coach there and you're looking what's best for the player, but the player hears a sniff of that next level of getting to where they want to. They don't want to hear what you've got to say on that either. They don't want you pulling the right.
Well, it's like, yeah, mate, and it's like I had a thing for me with young bowlers. Don't send them to Australia too quick for the winters. Like, amazing time. The boys have the best time. Bodies aren't ready. The body, have 1 or 2 winters where we're conditioning the body, getting that ready. Because young bowlers go away, they come back. They could do sort of 4 seasons on the trot and hardly play any cricket. What are we doing here? Why is this going on? Because a lot of the camps in Australia are like meat markets. They don't care. They don't give a shit. They'll run you into the grounds, bowl you, and then send you back. And hopefully, if you do make it, then they'll put out a picture saying he was once over with us. Well done. But we probably both know loads of bowlers who used to come back, especially during that mid 2000s to sort of mid noughties. They used to go over there and come back completely broke. Yeah, and the body's not ready for it.
The solution to that, though, I've worked this out, is you have to go. Because
I always said that, it never works.
There, right? You've got the weather, the lifestyle. You've got the Saturday, the game, and you've got the 2 cricket sessions on the Tuesday, Thursday. So imagine if you were there all winter with your bowlers. I think then you've got the makings of just the world's best cricket.
I kept telling Richo, he just wasn't having it. We should work perfectly. You're right. You got the weather, you got everything you need there. It's just that there's. Again, you're going in and working with people who don't really understand you as a bowler. It's just, right, how much can we bowl? Because especially if they're paying you, and then you've got to play through everything then, because they'll put you under the pump. Like this year, I worked with a couple of Aussies come over and playing sort of locally, and a couple of them weren't ready to bowl, and they were like, "Well, so I've got to play. I've got to play. They're paying me. I've got to play." And you just think, "Oh, Jesus Christ! Where are we? Or is anyone actually thinking long term, or just get this lad out right now?"
Oh yeah. It's a good dilemma. This actually, you know what? I'm interested. I'm coaching someone at the moment who's been told he's got to get quicker. All right, and they like somewhere between 5 and 10 mile an hour. Made his second team debut this year. Now, in my head, he's at an age where perhaps he should be working on everything that you've talked about. However, he's got this quick, short-term, I don't say contract thing over his head, but essentially he's been told by county, get quicker, or maybe we're not going to look at you. Well, what does someone like that do?
Well, here's the thing for me, and this is again very common. The county say, excuse me, the county gets saying, "Go and get stronger, get quicker," without providing them with the context to do it. It's like, wow, well, hang on, you're the county here. If you want someone, if you see that someone's got potential, and all they need to do is add some pace to it, surely you've got the expertise to say to them, right, if you follow this, then you'll put on that pace, then we can sign you. Too often the player sort of just lumps with that information, go and get quicker and you get a contract. And then like, well, how? Then there's suddenly fucking deafening silence because they're not told how, apart from get stronger. So this player then smashing himself in the gym, finding a pace isn't getting better, might pick up an injury. The county just walks away, and they're just left completely heartbroken on the ropes.
Yeah.
So that's the thing with me is, why is the county, these elite counties, only 18 in the country, why haven't they got the expertise to do this? Because they don't know how. If we get down to brass tacks, they do not know how to help a bowler really put on pace for good, apart from saying just try harder.
Yeah, no, that's valid. That's valid.
I'll say that, I'm not hiding behind it. Anyone can come and ask me about that. A bowling coach might want to bring it and say, well, I don't agree with that. Brilliant, let's have a chat. But the way I see it, I see very few people get help. Very few.
Yeah. No. Yeah, no, I agree. I do agree with you. I'm trying to think if I've got any more very specific questions for you, because I'm aware we've been over an hour and I don't want to keep you too long. That was okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you: is there anything that you've radically changed your view on in strength and conditioning? Do you know what I mean? Like you say, you came fresh into the game, and you had a very fixed view of something, and now you've just completely switched.
To be honest, if I look back to when I started in 2000, everything, there's nothing the same. There's literally, if I look at probably the first if someone showed me the first program I ever wrote for a player in 2000, I'd be embarrassed and ashamed, which doesn't worry me, because I think all you can do in whatever you do in life is do the best that you can with the best of your knowledge at that time. The issue for me, the issue I see in S&C in cricket, is no one wants to really take it forward, because that might mean you have to say we got it wrong before, and that's why we see the same programs time after time after time, because it's probably a harder thing to answer to a player to say, actually, no, I don't think the thing we did before was right for you. But I've always worked like that. I've always, I've never stopped learning, never stopped doing courses, never sort of going down rabbit holes of what's going to work. Would always try it on one or two players to start with. And luckily, especially at Worcester, the boys I had at Worcester were first class in terms of, they were like, well, let's try it, let's do it. And Richard was a bowling coach. Right, let's give it a go. As long as I went to them and said, this is my rationale, I've learned this. Even the stuff I've learned in the last year, I've sat there and just thought, Jesus Christ, I wish I knew this 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Because when I was at Somerset, it was one of my best mates got released there in my second year because of a back injury. And, that's played on my mind ever since, because I was like, Christ, now with the knowledge I've got, would have been able to help him in giving him a career. But you can only do the best with knowledge you've got at that moment. So, yeah, everything's changed, in for good reason. Whereas I think too much doesn't change.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's a really good point. And ultimately, we all just want to leave leave the whatever role it is or whatever shirt we're playing in, leave it in a better place for the next person, because that's the nature of it, isn't it? I thought, life moves on, all that sort of stuff. But yeah. Keith, you got any final questions, mate?
No, it just made me chuckle a little bit that you said, life moves on. I remember 2018, before the season started, we had a team meeting about the light shining over basically the club for so long before you move on. And I thought that was really good. And then at the end of the season, my shining light had finished. They
moved you on.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Oh dear. Right, Keith's frozen, but this looks like a good time to end it. We really appreciate you coming on, Ross.
My pleasure.
I've admired you a little, like from afar, really, for a long time. We actually haven't worked together, so I've been keeping up with what you've been doing and love what you put out. So just for anyone who doesn't know, to be fair, you're very easily reachable, aren't you, on Instagram? Is that your preferred platform these days, or TikTok?
Yeah, no, I'm 44, so Instagram, I could use that. TikTok, I still don't know what's going on, but yeah, just our DMs are always open. We're talking to players all the time, and again, our big message is just ask. Ask why. If you've got a coach of whatever sort of coach, and they're making you do something, ask why. If they can't answer it, then get a new coach pretty quick. But we are always open for any questions, and we're here to help.
Awesome. Right, thanks for your time. We'll end the recording there then. Take it easy.
Cheers.
See you, everyone.
The music at the end.
Oh yeah.